Okay, good morning. Let's finish off Kuf Peches. It's only a little bit to finish off. A Sif test, very interesting halacha. Says the Shulchan Orach, Shlishis ochlu b'Shabbos v'yom tovim, v'shokru lahaskim einam ura, v'em tzrichim lachs l'rosh birchas hamazon, yivarech kol echad b'fnei atzmai, ki midei zimun kva yotzu. In other words, fascinating halacha. You got three people sitting there and having a Shabbos meal, and they did the zimun, and then they realized, hey, we forgot to say Retzei. Or on Yom Tov, they forgot to say Yalav Yavai. So the halacha is they've got to bench again. They went too far, they've got to say it again. Do they do the zimun again? Says the Mechaber, no. Why? Because they're kva yots of the zimun, and each one's got to bench again, but they bench b'yechidus, because they've already done the zimun. Halacha test, there's no Mishnah on that. Halacha yud. Halacha yud. Haya'eichel v'yotz Shabbos, famous halacha. A person was eating, let's say, shalashudas, and it was a long shalashudas, and then, before he knew it, it was Motzei Shabbos. It could be an hour after Shabbos. Does he say Retzei in his benching? Mazkir shel Shabbos b'birchas hamazon. He mentions Retzei, even though it could be an hour after Nacht. Does linan basar hascholas hasuda, because he goes after the end. So he goes after the beginning of the Seuda. For hu adin l'Rosh Chodesh u'Purim v'Chanukah. And the same is true with Rosh Chodesh, Purim, and Chanukah. In other words, let's say you've got a Purim Seuda, which starts by day. Should really the halacha is your Purim Seuda should start by day. We're coming to that. Very good, Chaim. Very good. We'll see. We'll talk about Shav Brachas. We'll see. But if you go beyond the night, you go after the beginning of the Seuda, and therefore you will say Retzei, Yalav Yavai, Al Nisim, whatever it may be. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Yosef Kotten Leiv Lamed Beis. Since you began in the daytime, you got to mention whatever the theme of the day is, Retzei, Yalav Yavai, etc. Even though you went way beyond into the night, your chiyuv has not yet gone. Just look at 29, just the first line. Very important. For it to be considered a Seuda, which is a day, the Ketzois HaShulchan writes, you got at least have a kazayas of bread in the daytime. And by the way, who are then for Purim? People sometimes don't always realize that. You've got to have at least a kazayas. Really should have your rov Seuda by day. But at least a kazayas before Shkia. Right? Continuing the Mishnah Berurah, v'kos v'achreinim to mispal ma'ariv kodim b'rchas hamazon shuva ina maskeh Shabbos b'rchas hamazon to mechzik kasisri adodi. If you daven ma'ariv before you bench, then you can't, because once you daven ma'ariv, you're in the next day. And I'll tell you, this is no ger for me, kimat every Purim. Why? Because my shver has yortzeit the day after Purim, so he's always, we're going to have ma'ariv, and I'm in the middle of the Seuda. So, of course, I show respect to my father-in-law. So I try and get a minyan as soon as the shpilas come in or whatever. As soon as we have a good minyan, so then we daven ma'ariv, and I'm always b'teich Seuda. So once I've daven ma'ariv in the middle of my Seuda, when I say birchas hamazon for my Purim Seuda, because I've daven ma'ariv, I can no longer say al nisim, because it's a tarata disasri. Ma'ariv means I've begun the next day. If it's the next day, I can't say al nisim, which is mamash this halacha.
What happens if you forget?
What?
What happens if you forget?
Forget what? If you forget?
If you forget to say after.
Oh, right. We'll see. I think we'll see. We'll see. Yeah, I think we'll see. Seuda says Mishnah Berurah Lamed Gimel. Now here's the interesting one. What if your shalashudas goes well into Motzei Shabbos, and Motzei Shabbos Sunday is Rosh Chodesh? So Yazki b'Birchas Hamazon shel Shabbos levad v'lo shel Rosh Chodesh. Why? Because you can't be both. It's one or the other, right? And that's only true if you finish your meal miboid yom. It's not Shabbos and Rosh Chodesh, it's either one or the other. You can't do both. Rosh Chodesh should be Yom Rishon. You hear that? If your shalashudas spills over till Motzei Shabbos, and Motzei Shabbos is Rosh Chodesh, you mention Yalav Yavai. Why? Because with Motzei Shabbos mentioning Shabbos, there's a machlokes. But on Rosh Chodesh, which is now Shabbos Sunday, for sure is Rosh Chodesh. After on a paskin, and even though lemaisa we paskin, like the Shulchan Orach, those in the bottom of Torah, v'chayiv lahaskim b'shal Shabbos Motzei Shabbos, mikol mokum kan, shel mokum adchak, mutav sheyitzcha askaras Shabbos mipnei askaras Rosh Chodesh, to chiv l'kula alma. Very, very interesting. Ochein, but Motzei Shabbos l'Chanukah Purim. However, If Motzei Shabbos Sunday is Purim or Chanukah, then afilu im gomar sudosa b'layla ein maska shel Chanukah Purim rak shel Shabbos levad. Then you only mention Shabbos. Given the belav hochi haskarim ein amura the Chanukah Purim ein el rishus, because mentioning al anisim is not the same as Yalav Yova. It's just a rishus, and therefore you would mention Shabbos in that situation. Kein kosav hamagen avram v'oid harbe achreinim. Okay, so in other words, so far what have we said? If your Motzei Shabbos, your Shlishis spills into Motzei Shabbos, then you say Retzei on Motzei Shabbos, even though it's long after Shabbos. If, however, that's only if you've had a kazayas of bread before Shkia, during the Boidiyim. If you daven Mariv, then it's too late. That's end of the story. And if the Motzei Shabbos Sunday is Rosh Chodesh, then you've got a problem. Says the Mishnah Berurah, you should say Rosh Chodesh, because that's more of a chiyuv. But if it was Chanukah Purim, then not. You would say Shabbos, because Chanukah Purim is much less of an obligation. However, there are those who argue, and they say that if Yontov or Rosh Chodesh fall on Motzei Shabbos, Yazkir it say the Gam Yalav Yovei. You hear that? You say both. The Seuda, the Gam Boss Shashim Mavarich. You do both. We're not overly worried that they're contradicting each other. The Retzei is Chaim because you're Chaim on the Retzei because of the beginning of the meal. There's an additional chiyuv now to do what is the current situation. So there are those who say you do both. Very interesting. Im ochal bohem v'nisacha birchas hamazon ad erev tzarich lahaskid ozine bos zman hascholas hasuda v'hu shelo yispal la'arvis kanal v'ayin lekamon. Okay, now take a look at 32. This is Chaim's point. What about a Sheva Brachas? So Zok 32. Inyan Seuda Shabbos, Seuda Sheva Brachas hanim sheches l'toich leil yom shmini. It's the last Sheva Brachas. Kosev Ashari Tshuva she'ein holchim ba'achat tchilas hasuda. Exactly like Chaim said. You don't go after the beginning of the meal. In other words, you don't say, well, listen, I started when it was still day 7 of the Sheva Brachas, and therefore let me go 2 hours into day 8. No. Ve'ein levarach Sheva Brachas b'layla. U'bier b'shai l'shuvas ha'shevet ha'levi. Vosna explains, she'ein holchim ba'achat tchilas hasuda el in haskaras hamur she'retzei shel Yalav Yovei. Why? She'em heim chelek me'birchas hamazon mamish, because Yalav Yovei Retzei are a chelek of birchas hamazon. And since it's coming for a meal which began in the daytime, however, when it's a separate thing, then it doesn't go.
That's if it was the last day of Shabbos.
That's the last day of Shabbos, yeah. Yeah.
Because we did it here.
But Mariv, what happens, this the scenario of your father-in-law Mariv, so does he say Al Anisim still? Well, that's it. So
In Mariv?
Yeah.
No, because for him it's already the day after Purim.
So it fits in like with Chodesh Av. Chodesh Av.
Right. Mariv, that's right. If you daven Mariv on Rosh Chodesh, on Erev Rosh Chodesh, then you can't have your miti supper. So the Gabba announces it here. Yoni announced it, yeah. Okay, but say the Adkan. By the way, regarding Shabbos Sheva Brachas, there's Machlekes, that's the next note. Okay, that's a bit different.
You know that